Good morning, everybody. It is November 20th, 1 week before next week, which is Thanksgiving. Sure hope, please pray that my children will respect me and open the door of fellowship. Joshua, the jaguar, Timmy the tiger, and especially Jessica the giraffe. There's a lot of hatred that is being spewed by the husband of Jackie Wilson's, Rick Wilson. Some real nasty things to say about me. Here I was in business that required my hands. A physical job, climbing ladders, using sanding machines and lifting equipment. Now I was out of commission, and I worried about my future ability to make a living. It was my left hand, so I knew I could at least paint with my right hand. But why had this happened? I would never be able to play the guitar again or lead people in worship. Maybe this was as a result of my having walked away from my original calling. Who knows? Since I had not honored the gift I had been given, the gift was being taken from me because we have such a harsh, mean Father in heaven? No, not at all. Listen, kids, as I'm reading back my own biography written well over 30 years ago, and it was edited by a graduate in English from a particular college in Pennsylvania. Lynn was her name. She lived in Pennsylvania. Meticulously, she went through my manuscript and then left me with this one. And I think she moved to California. But I've come to understand that all things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to their purpose. That's Romans 8:20. And in Daniel, you have a situation where, or it's in the story of Joseph, who was sold into slavery by his own brothers, because poor Joseph opened his mouth and said what he heard the Lord say about him. His brothers in jealousy thought they had him murdered, and brought the bloody shawl or whatever it was that he was wearing back to his father, who wept and wept and wept. And Joseph went through hell and back again, but maintained his position as a servant of the Most High. They meant it for evil. God meant it for good. So we don't know until we get to the end of the rainbow. Here I am, page 50, nearly 77 years old. I would not have imagined that I would be reading back my own manuscript, listening to it myself, and then beginning to get to a good place because of Elaine, who, being a court reporter, she was able to precisely hear and type all day long in some of the most brutal trials on the face of the planet at the time, in where she was in Providence, Rhode Island. Very difficult place. Having fell in love, the two became one flesh when she met Joe, the love of her life. Now we're best friends. So one person told me this was an attack from the devil, but I was no longer using that scapegoat. I likened this. I'm eating something and drinking my coffee this morning. Please excuse me. Please excuse me. Let me guess your name. But what's puzzling you is the nature of my game. And then the glasses fall, and I think everything should be written, because everybody struggles through things. This is the beginning of a wrestling match Jacob had with the angel of the Lord the night he was struck with a dislocated hip. That reminder was left with him as a sign, and it was Jacob's determination that caused him to fight until he received the blessing from God. I saw myself in this same light. When it rains, it pours, and just when you think things are bad, they seem to get worse. For some related reason, my eyes began to experience pain. Instead of going to an eye doctor, I went to a regular MD. He prescribed drops in both eyes and patches over both eyes. So here I am, laid up because of this accident in bed, and now comes a double whammy. So here I was, unable to see, lying in bed with my hands still in a cast, wondering what it was like to be Job. Every thought of life was flashing before me. Was my faith being tested to the limit? Would I lose all my money and my children and find myself full of boils, cursing my life before God? All of this rushed through my mind as I lay on my back, wondering. I could identify with what Lee must have gone through psychologically when she lost the use of her arm. The trauma that the body endures when a limb is injured is amazing. One positive outcome of my experience taught me to be more sensitive to others who have limitations resulting from injuries. I also began to understand that health is often taken for granted. To lose that health is very limiting. I learned to be more thankful, to say the least. As I began to recover from my injury, pow, 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 pow. I don't want to rip these pages as I'm trying to turn pages with one hand, which is limited. Aha, another demonstration. As I began to recover from my injury, I reflected on my image of God. Some of the experiences of growing up under a strict father reinforced this negative image. One fear came from an event I remember vividly from my childhood. My sister and I were supposed to go to a show one night with my father in Scarsdale, New York, to go see Jerry Mahoney, the ventriloquist, with his two puppets, Knucklehead Smith, and the other one, Jerry Mahoney. My sister had been acting up, and he warned her that if she kept it up, we would not go. She continued, and he carried through with his threat. His action had a profound effect on me. I would panic when I thought that something would be taken from me because of my bad behavior. So my dad punishes the two of us. I wasn't acting up. I wasn't out of control. So why didn't Robin stay home with my mother and Dad take me? Nope. That was his military training, and he was a drinker. Done. Over with. Go to bed. But we were going to go see Jerry, Walter Winchell, Paul Winchell. Why? Why punish like that? But that was the way they did things. Some of them did. Some of them did who were in the military in order to create discipline. But you don't need that kind of discipline that harsh with children. As a teenager, my father took my driver's license away from me for 1 year. And the idiot, I respect him, I love my dad, he sent it back to Hartford in Westerfield, I believe it is, or Wethersfield in Hartford. You know how hard it was to get it back? And then it drove my insurance up. All he needed to do was keep the stupid thing, but not him. Everything was literal. Literal. When he was in the Army, Air Corps, everybody would say when they were asked, did you shine your shoes? Sir, yes, sir. He said no, because he refused to go along with what was known as spit shining. Right? So he talked about having to walk tours when he could have been between boot camp and going to Europe. He could have been able to be with everybody else. They made him walk tours with a 100-pound backpack, or however heavy it was, and walk around and around and around and around until, just like in Cool Hand Luke, we're going to get your mind straight, Luke. Well, my dad was going to get the Army Air Corps' mind straight. He got a lot of respect for that, but really, did he really have to go to those extremes? Talk about being diagnosed as bipolar. With a dad like that, you got to be living on the North Pole and South Pole at the same time. And the polarity of the Earth's magnetic field goes through you like a BEMER, BEMER, bioelectromagnetic pulse therapy. You can buy one for just $4,950 today, but there is a discount. Oh, I got sidetracked. So I took my license away in the summer of 1965, the summer that I lost my virginity to the girl that I fell in love with in 6th grade. Now I'm in 10th grade. I disregarded his warnings, and that punishment would come if I continued to enjoy myself, footloose and fancy-free that summer. I threw one too many parties at our house while my parents were out of town. And as if he didn't do stuff like that, he did it all the time. I tried to behave, but the summer fun was intoxicating. Losing my license was far more harsh than any of the punishments my friends experienced at the hands of their parents. My father's judgments were black and white when it came to meting out justice. But I had disobediently stepped over the line one too many times. His warning that he would take my license went unheeded, and his punish became reality. This absolute father helped form my God image. Now, Betty, who I loved dearly that summer, oh God, the first entrance, you can't even explain that. Oh my God. She told me, and I was actually on the phone with her just before she died of Parkinson's disease, just like my sister Robin did. And I couldn't believe it. I cried like a baby. And I had gotten in touch with her years ago when she went through a divorce. And we had a fun rendezvous one time while she cooked spaghetti dinner when she lived in Connecticut. And I was heading to a wedding. She said, "Your father never liked me." I said, No. Betty, he didn't even know that I was involved with you. He knew nothing. His punishment had nothing to do with you. In fact, sweetheart, when I was up at Candlewood Lake for a week, all I wanted to do was get back to your arms. And one night he came home really, really drunk with my mother. And of course, he wanted to do the wild thing. Bill, no. And as they walked into the rented place up on the hill at Candlewood Knolls, where my cousins used to rent this house, there was a can of tuna fish left open on the table. My mother started to bitch about that, and all of a sudden he went berserk. He came into the screen porch because it's hot in the summertime, and I'm sleeping out there with my two brothers. I'm in a dead sleep. He picks me up off the ground and throws me on top of my brother Billy, who's 5.5 years younger than me. Then he picks me up and starts to punch me in the back. Now, my dad had never used his fist before against me. The only thing I knew to do, because of my upbringing and understanding of the military, and I was yet to go to military school, but because of the Boy Scouts, the Cub Scouts, disciplines in so many ways, the way I defused him, "Sir, yes, sir, sir, yes, sir," and he stopped pounding. And he turned around and walked away, and then I was able to go back, not knowing what the hell had happened to me. I didn't cry. I was really angry, but I wasn't going to challenge the big man. And I found out the next day, my sister had done this, my younger sister, and she always got away with murder, and she had snuck away, didn't say anything to anybody, had her tuna fish, and then went to bed. My older sister Robin wasn't there. Nobody said a word to me. My mother didn't say, "Logan, I'm so sorry that this happened." Nobody said anything. Years later, Billy told me that he had been the one that was under when I was thrown over him. And my brother Peter was there. I don't know what part of that he recalls, but you understand, this kind of harsh treatment, you are beginning to believe that God is this way. Now, the Bible says the fear of the Lord is beginning in wisdom, but it doesn't mean he whips and beats us at all. That was done to Jesus, his son, in order for us to become the righteousness of God. I hope people are understanding this. Hallelujah. Who is my mother, it says, and who is my brother? but he who does the will of God. That's from the scriptures again. No reference. Look it up. Google it. For several years, we went to Florida for family reunions. My brothers, sisters, and my mother would all rent condominiums on the beach in Boca Grande. That's on the west coast. It is a little north of Sanibel, as the crow flies, on what would be now known as the Gulf of America. Alcohol played a major part in these reunions. My brothers and I would drink all day and into the night. Neither my sisters nor their husbands were big drinkers, but we made up for their lack of participation by carrying on the tradition my father had set for us. To party all day and into the night was expected. As you might guess, our wives were not too happy with us after days of this foolishness. Abusive behavior crept into these reunions, and overindulgence with alcohol did not help. Help. I need somebody help, not just anybody. Traditionally, our family isolated any member who did not behave as the rest of them expected, often using sarcasm to manipulate that person into conforming. I longed to be accepted by my family despite the ridicule I'd endured in the past for my religious extremism. I was especially sensitive to remarks about my lack of attentiveness. As a father, I spent part of my time alone playing tennis with people I met at the resort. But the comments about me would eventually get under my skin. I was experiencing the pressure. I almost killed a fly. I was experiencing the pressure of disapproval in a way I had not felt since I was berated by my father as a boy. Tennis had become a new reflection of my self-esteem. I obsessed with mastering the sport. This obsession was being compared with the time I spent playing with my children. My failure as a father was being emphasized by the amount of time I spent with my children versus the time my siblings spent with their children. And Jackie would say, "You never spend any time with me and the kids." Well, I should have been castrated at that time. A no-win situation. Eventually, I felt terribly guilty. I was easily manipulated by my own desire to be accepted by the group. This issue finally led to my isolation, both from my natural family and from Jackie and her family. And boy, you either kiss the ring of the borings or you're dead. You're out. You're out. As 1986 passed and the winter of 1987 arrived, life pressed in on me from all sides. Jackie was not happy with my fatherhood. I was becoming dissatisfied with work, and my spiritual life seemed non-existent. Our family reunion that year would end in disaster. The abusive behavior would reach an all-time high. Excessive drinking and flagrant ridicule at the hands of my siblings would drive me to the decision that would change the course of my life, my family's life, Jackie, the kids. Wow. Wait, all the little insects want to eat on me. While in Boca Grande that February, Jack and I looked into the possibility of renting some retail space and opening a bookstore. One thing led to another, and before we knew it, had written a check for a deposit on the store. We knew nothing of the business. We did not even know how we would accomplish such a move. All we knew was that I had to make this change. I was just barely existing, and with drinking too much, this looked like the opportunity that would help bring my life new meaning. It became the adventure of my life. To gain your life is to lose your life. I've been buried through baptism unto death. Look it up, kids. With a fresh vision and a whole new world to look forward to, our venture began. I knew nothing about books or retail operations except for my partnership in the paint store. When we got home, Jackie volunteered at the local bookstore, and I researched the information she brought home. Half the time we were planning, I would get cold feet and want to cancel the whole thing. But then I would think about the alternative and press on. I suppose that if this fly doesn't stop, good Lord, is it from heaven the devil or an angel tickling me? I would think about the alternative and press on. I suppose that any major change in life causes doubts. For me, and this adventure for anybody was the biggest gamble of my life. What if it was wrong? What if this was not the will of God? What would be the consequence? What would the consequences be? In August of 1987, we were ready to go. I bought a pull-along camper for the trip. And with the family in hand, we began our journey. I was able to leave some of the painting jobs to be finished by my men, and our home in Ridgefield was rented until we could sell it. And boy, they trashed our home. Don't ever rent your place without somebody stopping in every week. There were bills. There were bills galore. With so much ahead and a lifestyle of credit behind, somehow I believed this boat would float, even though I did not know just how. I knew this had to work, and I'd have to ignore my fears. The Boy Scouts taught me to be prepared, but I did not always pay attention. Taking inventory usually revealed I was missing a sock or two. This journey, this new life venture, had to float or sink. There was no in-between. Could you tell all your buddies, Mr. Fly, that I'm going to kill one of you? How many more should I kill? I would not look back. There was no in-between. I would deal with the problems as they came. This just had to work. We arrived in Florida on Joshua's 5th birthday. The trip had been fun. We camped at Jim and Tammy Baker's Heritage Village, USA. Sadly, they had been relieved of their duties there, and they built the place. Christianity, as I knew it, had fallen apart. I had moved on from that world, and the love for the Pentecostal experience still lingered in my memory. My life in Florida would not see anything close to that memory for many years to come, as I settled down to a world full of change. That fall, we registered the kids in a private Christian school, opened the bookstore, and tried to settle into a 3-bedroom condominium. The kids were used to having a yard to play in which to play, and they had such energy, so much energy, that I tried to keep them in the pool as much as possible. A rude awakening was in store for me and Jackie when the senior citizens greeted us with less than open arms. I did not realize that the retired population did not want children around them at all. Not being welcome was hard to take, and it did nothing to help the cultural adjustment we were experiencing. Like, do they have their diapers on? Are they in the pool? They're not supposed to be in the pool. You take them out of the pool right now. Whoa. Sandpiper Key, Englewood, Florida. Old farts. Now I'm one of those. Jackie and I had spent our whole lives growing up in New England, and even though the weather was warm, it was different. Jackie had been close to her family and missed them, to say the least. She also missed the mountains and the change of season. I heard these regrets from her repeated over and over and over, often as I tried to calm the storms that were just about to begin. Today has enough troubles of its own. Where my soul is full of troubles. Opening the bookstore before the tourist season gave me enough time to work on any unseen glitches. As I learned the business, I began to understand the buying patterns of small populations like inhabiting Boca Grande and any other small place. Boca's affluent clientele rarely hesitated to buy the more expensive hardback editions. That was cool. I immensely enjoyed the challenge of ordering the proper books even before someone would request a title. Usually I got my hint from a literate customer who wanted to read a particular author. I would then order a few more copies, just in case another customer who just had read the latest release would come in asking for the same book. Well, I was learning on the job, right on the spot. This process made me look like I was on top of the literary world, even though I couldn't even read myself. Hello, how could you possibly open a bookstore without having gone to college? The truth was I had very little interest in reading myself. I'd been forced to read. What irony. Here I was, with no formal training and with no desire to read, selling books for a living. But I was in the venture that met every dream I'd ever had. I love to talk to people, now a daily occurrence. I love to do business on the phone, and that became a part of my routine. I liked everything about this business. In fact, I loved it. But a storm was gathering ahead, and I did not know how to deal with it. The income was not catching up to the accumulated debt. Yeah! Borrowing from Peter to pay Paul never pays off anything. Really? But a storm was gathering ahead, and I did not know how to deal with it. The income was not catching up to the accumulated debt, and continuing to borrow it eventually forced me to come to grips with some ugly realities. We went, apparently, to Florida in $125,000 worth of credit card debt. Try that, kids. Back in 1987. I was, get out of here! Get! In the name of Jesus. I was determined to make it in this business and never go to painting ever again. Such an inflexible attitude left me to sink or swim, with no middle ground. The bookstore was making money, but like all businesses, that money had to be reinvested into the business. Our home in Connecticut sold, but the home we bought in Florida carried a higher mortgage, higher interest rates, adding more pressure to the problem. My previous lifestyle had been fueled by credit card debt, credit cards, and repayment of those credit cards was often accomplished by taking out second mortgages. That's all illegal, too, from the mortgage companies. They know this is happening. Buy cryptocurrency today, and Bitcoin, and you'll get around the whole banking system. That's the new thing that's coming. So then with credit cards free of debt, the pattern repeated itself. Eventually I carried over $100,000 worth of credit card debt. $100,000? I thought it was $125,000. This monkey on my back brought my life to a screeching halt. In the summer of 1988, we were forced to close the store and the house and return to Ridgefield because there was very little business during the summer in Boca Grande. In Ridgefield, I could go back to house painting. As much as I resisted it, I did it because the jobs were there. We turned the basement of Jackie's parents' house into a place for us to live, and I made enough money that summer to keep us afloat as we headed into the fall. Deciding to expand my earning power, I got my real estate license. Boy, was that hard to do, and I never thought I could pass a test like that. And then I was beginning to understand that very few people pass those tests, and I was smarter than I thought. And my plan seemed faultless, but the two businesses needed more time to generate income to support us. And I was running out of time. Time is on my side. There's another song. Time! Time! Go look those songs up. I think it wasn't the Righteous Brothers, it was two other brothers. And I was running out of time, under the pressure of not knowing from one day to the next what might happen financially. Morning, buenos dias, buenas noches. I was running out of time, under the pressure of not knowing from one day to the next what might happen financially. The cracks in our marriage were showing. I often worked late, arriving home. I'd be greeted with a nursery school environment. No order. Kids, crayons, toys everywhere. That had been the whole pattern in Ridgefield, too. Romper room. Just a mess constantly. Immediately setting me off. I'd harp on Jackie to get control over the situation. Make sure the kids are in bed. Make sure things are clean. Please. I'm tired. She would give me lip service just to get me off her back. And then she did what she wanted. Apparently she was interested in the kids' welfare more than agreeing with me. That's often a crack in a lot of marriages. Our friction had an effect on the kids, causing them to think that I was unhappy with them, though my discontent was with their mother. I thought that in the Christian home, she was supposed to follow my leadership as the head of the family. I wanted order. She wanted the kids to have freedom of expression. Neither of us would yield. And I think because of the Bible, and I'll say it today, honor your mother and your father so that it will go well with you, and wives, respect your husbands. Husbands, treat your wives as if they're your own body. Wash her with the water of the word. A lot of work has been told to a man. This is the definition of love. But if a woman doesn't respect you, what good is it? You know? And she does stuff behind your back. The kids. She's married to the kids. She's not married to me. One day I arrived home to find romper room being conducted in the kitchen. I hit the ceiling. I screamed at Jackie about the kitchen's appearance and how my desire for order was basically being mocked. As usual, she responded with sarcasm. I blew up. Grabbing a chair and smashing it on the floor, I demanded that Jackie show respect for my authority. Actually, it wasn't just the floor that I hit. I hit the table too. Oh, and I warned her, if you don't immediately stop and listen to me, the next chair is going to go through the window. Smart enough to keep quiet, she knew she was not equipped to deal with such fury. I would live with the guilt of that moment as she would remind me that she had grown up with that table and chair set. Later, Jackie told me that Timmy was affected by my blow-up that day, and now he was losing his temper just as I had. The blame for his new behavioral patterns was assigned to me, not her. And in a strange way, I would accept the blame, I even thought I did not witness this new, that should be corrected. Even though I did not witness this newfound behavior myself, I was being worn down for not meeting Jackie's expectations of me as a father, adding just one more piece of straw to an already weakened and breaking back. Blame can be terrible from a projection of guilt if you're not sure of your parenting skills. I've always been emotional in response to events I cannot control. This event weighed heavily on me as I tried to understand why I had lost my temper so violently. I remember how furious my father was with my mother when they fought. The more my father screamed, at shot, and shook his fist, the more my mother got in his face. This taunting seemed so unfair. His masculine honor would never let his temper get physical with her, though she pushed him to the brink. Mom would never stop throwing gas on his fire. I always thought that if I were ever taunted this way, I would not restrain my fury. I was never any more physical than this furniture incident. It was designed to get attention by inflicting fear on Jackie. I forgot that just as I had witnessed my parents, now I was being watched by my children. I never wanted to repeat my parents' sins, but without realizing it, history had, in fact, repeated itself. This would bother me much more than the broken chair because I was never sure how it affected Timmy. As the pressure to be there for the kids turned into a chore rather than a joy, I stayed at work longer than I needed. One parent spent every moment trying to meet their every need, while the other couldn't function in that capacity. As a result, our children were very needy. Their expectation to be entertained became the force that drove a wedge between us. I did not believe in giving into a child's every imagined need. Since my mate's belief was different, the stage was set for a good guy versus bad guy scenario. The good guy gave them what they wanted, the bad guy did not. My authority eroded as I fell into the trap of performing as a father rather than being a father. Jackie's constant reminders that I was not spending any time with her and the kids became the mantra that I was subjected to over and over again. It did not matter that this was a distortion of the truth. It became the truth. She compared me to other fathers in both her family and in mine, and because I did not believe in myself, I fought a losing battle. If you look at a woman with lust in your eyes, the man was already committed adultery with her in his heart. As the years passed, I once again longed for the sexual excitement I had known through my erotic nature. Since my conversion, I had limited myself to a restricted sexual lifestyle. But as I relaxed my rigidity, I now wanted more stimulation. I watched some soft porn, looked at some Playboy magazines, and even masturbated to this stimuli. The guilt did not seem to rage as before, but this desire for more continued to press me. I found pleasure in these private moments alone, living in the desires of these fantasies as my world began to unravel. And Jackie couldn't meet these needs at all because she herself was in denial. And still, we tried. I completed real estate school in the fall of 1988, passed the state examination, and began to look for a place to put my license. I was offered a position in a firm in Boca Grande, but with no one to train me, I moved to a small office in Englewood, Florida. It was winter before I made my first sale, as I tried to balance my time between the store and selling real estate. The income was not enough to prevent the obvious. How would I get through one more off-season without going under? It was time to sell the bookstore. While the season was here, get as much as possible for it, then build up the real estate business through much tribulation. The bookstore sold. With it, my dream became history. Hallelujah. If it weren't for the one right there on the cross 2,000 years ago, we'd all be lost. As a woman comes in and kneels and begins to have her morning prayer, and the statues help her envision Yeshua HaMashiach. Here I am at Our Lady of Clearwater, where the Lord told me the reason I'm here on Drew Street in the corner of 19 North to Tarpon Springs and South to Largo is because He's bringing the greatest revival this country's ever seen, and I'm helping to usher it in through prayer. As the years passed, I once again longed for the sexual excitement I had known through my erotic behavior, and I've read that, right? I completed real estate school in the fall of 1988, passed the state examination, blah, 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 blah. I moved to a small office in Englewood because I was offered a position in the firm in Boca Grande, but that didn't work. No one there was even willing to train me. I moved to a small office in Englewood, Florida. I didn't realize that nobody just trains you. You're independent. You better know what you're doing. And you don't know what you're doing just because you passed an exam. So I moved to this small office, and it was the winter before I made my first sale as I tried to balance my time between the store and selling real estate. The income was not enough to prevent the obvious. How would I get through one more off season without going under? It was time to sell the bookstore while the season was here. Get as much as possible for it and build up the real estate business. Though through much tribulation, the bookstore sold. With it, my dream became history. I think I just read that. The summer of 1989 found me back in Ridgefield, Connecticut, trying to sell Florida real estate to any interested investor. I made a video of the properties in the Englewood, Florida area, along with a brochure. I made up all this stuff. I did all of this. I presented these to some of the real estate firms in the area, hoping to start a network of referrals for anyone considering moving to sunny Florida. It was a great idea, but I expected people to respond more quickly. They didn't. I learned that real estate did not sell as quickly as I needed, so the fear of losing everything occupied my thoughts. I could have painted houses that summer, but I did not give myself that option. I was sick and tired of smelly stuff on me, sawdust in my face and my eyes, and paint in my nose. I chose instead to ride this last venture, hoping for a miracle. Eventually, the fear of losing everything gave me anxiety attacks that would cause shortness of breath as I imagined the worst. I began to resent the owner of my office, watching her make sale after sale, but not help me develop a marketing strategy. Real estate was a competitive game for her, but with no risk because her husband owned the world. She was just a sugar daddy bitch. With no risks, her independent wealth came from her husband. I was gambling everything, and I thought someone in her position could help me. Just a little advertising, and the phone would ring. But she was not willing to help, so I left her firm to seek my fortune in Sarasota. Another company had promised me greater opportunity in this. Damn, flies are a pain. Now I lost my place. Sarasota. Oh, get out of here. Another company had promised me greater opportunity in this large market. I hoped that would be true, and so did my prayers. I had all the trappings. It had all the trappings, bells and whistles to play the part of a real estate agent. I drove a Volvo, was leased with payments. I had a car phone with payments. I owned a home on 5 acres with first and second mortgages. I also had very little income. My house was on the market so that if I downsized, I could continue to fuel the debt by living in a less expensive home with a smaller mortgage. If I could just get that one big sale, I could pull out of this nosedive and head for safer ground. I was like a gambler who has lost everything. My business is gone, in debt over my head. But who chases the illusion that just one win will turn everything around? This fantasy encountered a major hitch as my life began to plummet down a slippery slope of no return. One day, a group of us who had attended real estate school together met for lunch. I was excited because it was an opportunity to be in a business environment with young people again. Just 4 of us showed up, 2 men and 2 women. 3 of us were married. One of the women was not. As we drank, I watched my fellow male counterpart begin to make the moves on our single female friend. I was cautiously thrilled, but tried to convince myself that I should be disturbed. I had been down this road before, and it did have elements of excitement. But I could never do that again and risk everything. Ironically, the married woman told a story about a friend who risked an affair and lost his whole family. I thought, what kind of fool would do that? I was intoxicated with the lure of excitement as I witnessed the two. Mr. Fly. Good Lord. Be nice to the fly. How about that? Hi, nice fly. Get in my face. I thought, what kind of a fool was that? I was intoxicated with the lure of excitement as I witnessed the two flirt with one another. My cautionary thoughts were being provoked, and this romantic fever would catch me by surprise as the potion surged from within. I was taking the bait with very little will to run away from it. I was playing with the temptation of the romance of an affair. The excitement was luring me from the reality of my responsibilities. When I got home that evening, I told Jackie what had happened. For some reason, I told her that I could stop the affair if I was in one. I had been able to use my will in my experiences with Lee and Wendy, and I could certainly do the same if I fell into an affair now. This was a disturbing discussion for her, and so I dropped the subject. It intrigued me, though, and helped me escape the financial fears looming around the corner. A chain is only as strong as the weakest link, and there was a buried weakness in me that was about to surface. Over the years, in an intimate moment, Jackie would ask me if I would ever leave her. I could not understand why she would question me. It seemed as if her asking were eroding my own confidence. I think I will finish this one page. I felt it was my responsibility to prove to her that her fears were unfounded. I remember how it made me feel, as if I could not be trusted. I told her about my old misdeeds before my conversion, and that those evils had been conquered by my walking the straight and narrow. Yet for some reason she did question me. Could she see something in me that caused her to fear? And was her dependence on me creating that fear? Bringing her assurance and alleviating her fear became an impossible task to fulfill. This was codependency, and I was finding out how deeply entrenched I was in this web as well as her. I still had an addiction to escaping sexually with other women. Jackie must have known this intuitively, or it was her unconscious insecurity brought on by my dark side. I will never know for sure. I'm sure her questioning me in these intimate moments eroded my self-confidence, in the same way that Lee thought I was coming back to her after the accident because of my feeling guilty. Instead of believing I really was sincere, Jackie questioning me left me feeling I had to prove my love. But having to prove my love left me feeling insecure, and like I was facing an impossible task. It was a vicious circle. I have been crucified with Christ. He was then guided by the Spirit into the desert. I've been crucified with Christ. It is no longer that I who live, but Christ who lives in me, who loved me and gave himself for me. Knowing this, that our old self was crucified with him in order for the body of sin to be done away with, so that we are no longer slaves to sin. That's Romans 6:6. The other is from Corinthians. I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. I was just beginning to learn about the real estate market in Sarasota and the habits of some of our agents who like to go for a happy hour at the end of the day. Some of the girls in the office were young and loved to flirt. Uh-oh, here it goes. We're going to leave it right there. I wonder what happened next. Happy trails to you until we meet again. I met a man named Rungle. I met him in the jungle. The moon was bright. It was a Saturday night. I said, now, hey, everybody, let's rungle tonight. And we sang Rungle in the jungle. It's a happy, happy tune. Bye-bye, everybody. Good morning. Good evening. Buenas noches. Buenos dias. Buenas tardes.